What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of D. Haynes and Doc Fantasy Sports Podcast. We are finally here for some people. The week 16 is a pretty big week for you guys. You know, that second time around, if you're in 2-round leagues, you've gotta capitalize this week from a rough week last week. Me being that one person that had a rough week last week, I've got to capitalize this week. So I'm right there with you guys. But you know what? We're going to get into it right now and see who to look for your Week 16 waiver wire pickups, because there are a lot of injuries out there with some star players. So we have to figure it out. We'll figure it out this show. Let's get to it. So one waiver wire I would really look into currently for this week is Ty Chandler. Now, with Madison being out, he's still questionable for coming for this game this upcoming weekend. But with him being out, Chandler had a great outing against the Cincinnati Bengals. He recorded 26 rushing attempts for 132 yards rushing and finished with 24.7 fantasy points. Whoever had them and picked them up last week, congrats. You probably won yourself the league with that kind of performance for a running back. But this is actually, believe it or not, the first time that a Vikings running back has recorded over 100 yards in a game since Week 10 of last season. That is right. It's been rough for the running backs from the Vikings here lately. If Madison remains out, I'd consider Chandler a possible running back 2 option this week. If he comes back, I would still consider Chandler a flex play just due to how he performed last week. And he runs the ball hard, and I think he could possibly take over Madison's position possibly next year if it comes to it, because I think that Chandler right now currently is running a lot harder than what Madison has all year. Another guy to look at is Zamir White. This is if Josh Jacobs does not play this upcoming week. If he doesn't, look for him, because he finished with 17.5 fantasy points last week as he was the sub for Jacobs as he was out. Now, 20 touches was great. But once again, if Jacobs does come back, I wouldn't even touch Zamir White. But if he doesn't play again, I possibly could lock this guy in for bigger leagues as what I would say for a possible flex option. I wouldn't say RB2 just because we've seen only one game from him. I don't know if I wouldn't be comfortable doing it, but if you have no other choice, so be it. But yeah, he finished with 20 touches, 17.5 fantasy points, and if Jacobs can't go this week, this might be a good one for you guys to pick up. So if you just have any doubt in the world, pick him up right now off the waiver wire so no one else does. Could be yours. But yeah, that's one guy to look at. Now this is probably the biggest waiver wire pickup, I think. Or yeah, I'd say probably number one actually, behind the guy I'm going to talk about next. But Derek Carr. Finally, he's not getting booed anymore at New Orleans. He actually had a game that he needed. I'll just say that. He needed this game last week against the Giants. He threw for 3 touchdowns and a win over the Giants this past weekend. Had 20.3 fantasy points with the upcoming matchup Carr is facing. Now, this is where you guys need to listen up here, especially in the playoffs. If you feel like you're going to jump to that next step and you have a QB that's just kind of wishy-washy or, is on the edge or who knows, is going to get injured or is injured, look for this man. He should highly be looked at, because this is why I think he'll be either a QB2 or even possibly a QB1 option in these next couple of weeks with 16-17 coming up. Because he goes up against a struggling Rams secondary this weekend, and then a struggling Buccaneers secondary next weekend. Now, both of these two teams rank in the top 8 in terms of fantasy points allowed to QBs per game. Wild. So, is Carr gonna be able to put up some more numbers like he did against the Giants? I truly think so. If he has that same output like he did against the Giants, against even these two teams that are struggling alongside of that, I think this guy will give you guys great output in your fantasy values for a QB. Next year, Hunter Henry. The past 2 games, Henry has 106 yards and 3 touchdowns. Yeah, you heard me right. He scored 19 fantasy points in each game And they go up against the Denver Broncos defense that has allowed the most fantasy points per game to tight ends. And guess what? Hunter Henry's only rostered 17.5% in ESPN leagues. Crazy to me. Crazy. But if you need a tight end, for instance, Travis Kelce hasn't been putting out for my team this week, or not even this week, the second half of the year. I'm honestly, I'm not going to bench him, no. But Hunter Henry, I feel like, is a great option for some people that have those kind of doubts for their tight ends, because the last two games, him and Zappy have been perfect with each other. He's been like his number one go-to. So look out for Hunter Henry. If you need a tight end, definitely pick him up. If you feel like you can have better options with this guy, I'd pick him up and switch out with your other tight end, because right now Hunter Henry is playing phenomenal ball. So that's one guy to look at. Now, I'm going to go with some of these guys that are kind of just on the wire. Those guys I feel are for sure good. But there's one more guy, there's one more guy that I feel like would be a phenomenal pickup, and you see him on the screen, Baker Mayfield. I'm excited for this man. He's worked his butt off from where he started to where he is now. He has done a phenomenal job, not just, on the football field, but off, how he was kind of in that little hesitant, kind of like a Manziel kind of thing. But he's done very, very well. He had a season high 29 fantasy points against the Packers on Sunday. And that's with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin with his two top receiving playmakers. So, I mean, we have those two types of guys to pass to. I'm not going to exclude White, because Rashid White, the running back, has put up some numbers this year. Phenomenal job. I have him as my running back, and I cannot be happier. But yeah, he's amazing as well. And then you have the Buccaneers that are facing against a Jacksonville Jaguars defense in Week 16 that has allowed the third most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. I see Baker Mayfield going off once again. He's rostered 49.1% in fantasy leagues, so he is normally taken out there, but he could be open. And if you can find him and pick him up, it'd be a great pickup, I think, this week, especially if you're in need of a quarterback. It would be a huge pickup for Baker, especially with how he's been in the last few games. But other ones to kind of hit on, you got Gardner Minshew. I feel like he will have to throw the ball a lot more this week, going up against a rough Atlanta Falcons running defense. I don't see Zach Moss or Trey Sermon getting too much value this week. If they do, it might be in the pass game. But I don't see them running the ball too well this week, because, Atlanta's defense is unbelievable when it comes to the run. I think they're third against the running backs, or against the run in general. But Atlanta's defense has given up the 12th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. So that's one reason why I kind of think if you are looking at another quarterback, then all these other ones are taken. If you have to do like a quick hit thing, Gardner Minshew would definitely be one. I know he's only rostered 15.5% in ESPN leagues, and he has scored 18 or more fantasy points in 2 of his last 4 games. So it's another one. It's another quarterback I'd kind of target a little bit. He had a wishy-washy week last week due to the very, it's weird to say, but actually very good Bears defense. They were unbelievable last week, I think. But yeah, Joe Flacco, 11.4% in fantasy leagues is another option for deeper formats, I would say. But he's thrown for 939 yards in his first 3 games with the Browns. That's crazy, especially just getting into that system and finding those guys and, having that good relationship already with them. It's unbelievable. And I was watching him this past weekend with Amari Cooper. He'd find him down the field easily. He'd wait for him to turn around just to make sure that they're still looking. There were some routes where the timing was kind of off still. Once they find that timing, I think it'll be good. But right now, the Browns are looking good. They're in the wild card hunt above the Bengals and the Colts at the number 5 seed. And if they keep winning out and somehow the Ravens lose a couple games, they could switch flip-flop with the Ravens, but I don't quite see it. there's only a couple games left remaining, and they have to win out. But this week, I think they'll be all right. But Joe Flacco is another one that you gotta look at, I believe. I think that he's finally. I don't say finally because this man's been in the league forever, but he has that. He has what I want to say. I mean, he has the entire. He's been in the league for 15 years, I think, something like that. I mean, he knows what goes on. He knows what the looks are. He can read through all the looks and be able to figure out what's going on. Now he had 2 interceptions. One of them was actually right to the defenders, but I think that was probably a missed route. But they're going. I mean, yeah, Joe Flacco. It's if you need a quarterback in a big league and all your other quarterbacks are just not doing too hot, I think he'll perform pretty well against the Houston Texans this week. And plus, he kind of has to. So if the Browns want to keep their spot alive, Houston can actually jump up on them if they win this week. But so can the Colts. Let's hope the Colts can do well this week as well. But other than that, guys, I feel like it's going to be a pretty short show today. I just wanted to give you a couple inputs on some waiver pickups, on who I think you guys might be able to benefit from this week, as well as possibly next week as well. And another one, guys, Taj Spears as well. I've always kind of put him out there, but he's rostered 40.1% in ESPN leagues. With them officially being eliminated from the playoffs, I just don't know if Derrick Henry is going to get the amount of value as they are used to giving him. So I wonder if they'll put in Taj Spears a little bit more often and give him more fantasy value going up from now, as Derrick Henry is not even certain he's coming back to the Titans next year. So look out for that. Kind of have your ears open on that one. If you have Spears already, I'd just keep him. Watch out to just listen to some news on what you guys hear, as well as if Isaiah Pacheco doesn't go this week again, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and McKinnon, great pickups, as well as if you did pick them up last week, you had a great fantasy value from them for not being starters this week. 20.1 fantasy points for Helaire, and I believe it was about 17 for McKinnon. So great output from them. And another team to kind of look, or another players to kind of look for. This is more on the waiver wire with Tyler Algier going up against a very struggling Colts defense that's given up the 4th most fantasy points per game to running backs. Now, due to the fact they do have Grover back in the lineup, which will help, but I still think the running backs for the Falcons could take advantage of this. But I said that last week with the Panthers, and that was a very rough week for them, losing to the Carolina Panthers 7-9. So just take some ideas. Some of my ideas, you can take them or not, take them or leave them. But I just give you guys some heads up, some stats, what you guys can look for, and hope you guys have a great week 16. We'll see you again Friday or Saturday for the show for your sit-em. Well, actually, you know what? Yeah, we'll go Friday for the show on your starts, sit-ems, and sleepers. Until then, guys, I hope you guys do well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Please sub if you haven't. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Ring the bell, notifications, turn them on. Till then, guys, deuces.